Welcome to the Stockout. This is your show of FreightWaves for the retail and CPG industries. Good to see you, Grace. You must have the lighting weird. You look a little red.
Yeah, a little red. No, I cut my hair off. But yeah, happy to be back on the show. You did an excellent job last week without me, and perfect timing for a great episode on the election as well. So we'll have a lot to talk about the rest of this year, that's for sure.
Yeah, well, thanks for saying that. Went through last week. If you haven't seen it, went through what I thought was going to happen with the election. Well, at least what I thought some of the implications would be, mostly if Trump was elected. So it made the show more relevant that he was, and a lot to do
Yeah.
with tariffs, of course, a lot to do with the MAHA, the Make America Healthy Again, which could have pretty big impact for its supply chains, putting Robert F. Kennedy Jr. in charge of kind of a lot of these different agencies, really. So very interesting times. It'll give us a lot to talk about as things develop. Today we have a great show. Also have Tom Schmitt, Nikola's chief commercial officer. So the company that I think most people are familiar with on the clean energy side. Very innovative company. I think one that's been in the news just a ton. So looking forward to talking to him. And want to make sure people know how to reach them sort of ahead of that interview or after you listen to it. So discover the future of transportation today. Visit Nikola's website to explore their zero emission Class 8 trucks, transform your fleet, and lead the charge into sustainable logistics. Learn more at nikolamotor.com. So I encourage you to do that. Also encourage you to sign up for the Stockout newsletter. Just go to www.freightwaves.com/the Stockout. It'll be in your inbox every Wednesday at 2:00 Eastern is the goal there. And then if you can make it to Chattanooga in a couple of weeks, there's still time to do that for the Future of Freight Festival F3. Have some B-roll there, but this is going to be a great opportunity to network with people in the industry, see a lot of innovative companies that demo on the freight tech side, which Grace, I know really all about those freight tech companies. That's November 19th through 21st in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Really our flagship conference of the year. So I encourage you to do that. And with that, I think we'll go into our first topic today, which last week, our founder and CEO, Craig Fuller, declared an end to the freight recession. He wrote an article there, and accompanying with that article is a video. It's about 20 minutes long, him discussing the freight market with Zach Strickland, who's the head of market intelligence at FreightWaves. And it's worth watching through to the end. I mean, the end was pretty dramatic. But Grace, what did you think of that call?
Yeah, I love it. I think, especially right after the election, it totally makes sense and brings me back to the first time that Trump won as well. I mean, in that position, I was working in brokerage and particularly moved a lot of metals and a number of goods that potentially could have been under some extreme tariffs. And it definitely changed the way the market responded. And you add on, it's just like a perfect mix of certain things happening. Particularly, right, he brought up a lot of the changes that we're going to see from the FMCSA and the clearinghouse as well. So there's some capacity constraints that we have to, of course, check out there. Of course, having sonar and realizing some of the statistics behind it, the fact that we're rising above the 6% tender rejections. We've seen some really great numbers on the spot rates as well, and an increase there. I mean, in the day, and that's why I love working here at FreightWaves, we're all about looking at data and making some really hard bets on places that need those bets. And I think I agree with him with everything that's out there in front of us. And you add on Trump's victory as well, and it's really hard to say that we won't see a significant change in the market too. So clearly he brought this up in his chat, and I've seen it on numerous experts post on it as well. It's time for logistics providers to get with shippers, and of course, you brought up the tech aspect, right? And I think adding the third-party data onto this too, I'm really excited to see how this industry improves on itself and how it, especially for LSPs, and how they actually are providing an education to shippers. And this right here is kind of that moment. Who's going to be out there hitting those phones, talking to shippers, educating them on these things that, of course, Craig brought up, and on data that we can provide to back this up too, and start winning, some interesting lanes, and start, of course, seeing some improvements in their sectors as well, along with, of course, what we hope for the trucking market too. So I'm excited. I don't know if it's like we're on the eve of F3 to add on to that excitement too, but it's just, I think, a perfect opportunity for FreightWaves and for our team and for Sonar in particular to showcase to everyone, hey, listen, this is the point of the investment in third party data, and to make these observations, and in this industry in particular, be the first ones to respond to them as well.
Yeah, you're excited. I think the investors in the freight stocks are also excited. We can put up an Old Dominion freight line chart, which that one's been one of the most popular stocks in the space. But you see that this is the 1 month return is up 17%. The last 5-day return is up about 12%. So it's had a nice bounce there. I think the LTL carriers really have some of the most to gain from bringing manufacturing back, because you have something manufactured in the U.S. You have multiple points of handling that can lead to just more freight demand than an import where you bring in oftentimes a finished good. So the investors are very bullish. Sounds like you're bullish. Craig's bullish. I've been somewhat positive for some time. Just got to follow the intermodal industry, and those volumes have really been strong. Really all year. And lately, the carriers seem optimistic they're going to get rate increases on the contractual rate side. So I encourage you to go and check out all the coverage on FreightWaves.com. I think that the pace of the articles has picked up some, and so lots to look at every day.
One thing I wanted to add to that, I actually had our good friend Brain Ladd on the radio last week as well. And I'll be actually posting an article of some of the transcripts from that interview, but you can check that out on SiriusXM on demand if you missed it. But he himself was also very, very bullish on not, of course, just the economy as a whole, but M&A action in particular we'll talk about, and some really interesting M&A action even in the freight tech space as well. And, of course, where we're going to see investors put their dollars in this economy. So you guys can check that out too. I'll be posting that later today.
It sounds great. So let's intro today's guest. We have Tom Schmitt. Nikola is a Chief Commercial Officer. Do we have Tom?
Good morning.
Hey, good morning. Good to see you. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for sponsoring the Stockout.
I'm glad to be here with you guys. On the last topic, by the way, it's been 2 years that we've had a tremendous down cycle, which is amplified, and it's longer than normal. And it's following also a longer than normal up cycle in 21 and 22. So I fully agree with you. It's high time. And it's also perfectly in line that those 2-year cycles up first and down kind of come to an end. And now it's back to up times again.
Mm-hmm. Everyone's spirits are high today on this episode. And on that note as well, Tom, clearly you have a wonderful tenure in this industry. When we look at electric vehicles in particular and fleets, I want to start with the big question in the room, which is the barriers, right? What do you feel like is the biggest barriers for companies who are looking to electrify their fleet going forward?
I think it's all about knowing that it is possible kind of to change what the status quo is. I've been in transportation. You mentioned it, that I've got quite a bit of tenure in this industry for 3 decades. But even if you go slightly further back, in the 70s and 80s, when Toyota came out with Six Sigma and designing kind of zero defects in, the backlash, and I was a high school student at the time, the backlash was, that's not possible. That's too costly. That's too expensive. You cannot do that. Well, you fast forward 10 years from the Six Sigma phenomenon, and the companies that followed it thrived, and the companies that did not follow it went to the wayside. It's about believing that, yes, there will be a fuel cell hydrogen highway. Yes, there will be battery trucks where we move transportation and business forward better going forward. And again, we have changed what's possible all along the way over the last decades. I was with FedEx for 12 years. And the founder, Fred Smith, came up with this crazy idea that was in a Yale term paper, which got graded C- because it was not realistic to move boxes and letters across initially the USA on dedicated planes. No one has heard about that. Well, you fast forward, obviously, and it's changed the way the economy worked globally. So it's about the biggest barrier is the belief. Yes, it's possible to change the status quo. It's changing what's possible. The industry and transportation has done this for decades, and we're going to do it again. So that mindset of belief is something that has to be in place, and then the actions will obviously follow and make it a beautiful reality.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's that's very interesting. I'm sure as chief commercial officer, you speak with a lot of the big shippers, big CPG companies, big retailers. As far as getting that belief in order, where is there pushback, or where don't they understand what electric and hydrogen can do?
Yeah, some of it, Mike, is about education, right? So it's about these trucks, actually, both the battery trucks that we have as well as the fuel cell trucks, they are safe. Secondly, they actually do work. So when you go to Southern California today, I was just there a couple of weeks ago, probably have been there 3 times in the last 2 months. You go there and you can see the ecosystem actually at work. There's 160 plus Nikola trucks on the road in Southern California. They do haul goods for some of those consumer goods companies that we're talking about here very reliably every single day. So it is safe. These trucks actually work. In Southern California, you can see it in action real time, and this is just the beginning. We're expanding in other parts of the country. We also are making Canada a major focus area. So again, this goes back to my first point about belief. You have to believe that it's possible, but you also have to educate yourself. There's 160 trucks already in California, Nikola trucks, beautifully in operation for some of the leading companies in transportation and in consumer goods. And it's a reality that works. The drivers love driving our trucks. I just spent time with a driver at the end of a 4-week demo run, and he was having tears in his eyes, like, this was my last run. I just hope that we're going to buy a few of those because I don't ever want to go back to a diesel truck. And then I had a test drive with a driver of one of our best business partners and customers, IMC. And he was saying, hands down, this is the best truck for any driver. So it's an experience that's real. You can see it in action in parts of the country. Again, Southern California is probably the most pronounced. And it's a reality where they're safe, the trucks work, and it's an ecosystem that's just at the beginning, and it's going to take off.
I want to touch on that ecosystem just a little bit here too. There's a lot of pushback, and I think this might go into the believing aspect and what's actually available, maybe more education. But clearly, a big pushback is, do we have the infrastructure ready for this technology, for that investment to work for them? Can you tell us maybe, or demystify that at all for us, or tell us some of the work that Nikola is doing to improve on that as well?
Yeah. So first of all, I think it's an and, not an or, between the 2 types of zero emission trucks that we offer. So we have a battery truck, and with the charging capabilities becoming more ubiquitous, the challenge of infrastructure, Grace, is smaller with them. You can obviously operate battery-driven trucks across the country, but also across North America. We always include Canada into our plans as well. So for fuel cell, the hydrogen trucks, which have a bit more range, the challenge is the one that you're describing. The infrastructure has to be grown together with the trucks being rolled out. And this is where it's an ecosystem of partners. It's a coalition of the ones that are driven by this mission of making transportation better and moving goods forward the right way. And yeah, we have to build it out where the infrastructure, the fueling infrastructure, grows in tandem with the customer needs and the rollout, which is why I mentioned Southern California. This is where we have several of our fueling stations in place so that those lanes can be serviced. Drayage companies can go from the ports to railheads or distribution centers. Some of the best leading companies, both in transportation and in consumer goods, can drive some of their key lanes. But yes, together with them, and others, we have to build out the infrastructure. But go back again, go 15 years ago, 20 years ago, and you look at personal cars, and people had the same concerns about range. Where do I get to recharge? Is fueling possible? Yes, I like the car, I like the mission, I like the purpose of moving ourselves forward in a healthier, more sustainable way. But clearly this seems to be challenged. Well, we had the same challenge with battery trucks. That's being resolved with more charging capabilities available. And again, in hydrogen, the fueling capabilities have to be grown in tandem with the rollout of the lanes and the trucks. So it's a system of partners. We have built up our own hydrogen fueling stations. We need others to coexist with us in this ecosystem that we're building.
Mm-hmm. And how do you structure your agreements with customers? I mean, I imagine it's different than in a traditional truck where maybe you're doing, more on the maintenance side. There's a fueling part of the package, and is it more like a kind of like an all-in lease?
Yeah, again, Mike, we have two platforms, and for many of our customers over the next several years, it's going to be an and or not an or. So they will be deploying the battery trucks in some parts of the country where the hydrogen fuel infrastructure still has to follow, and they will be implementing the hydrogen fuel trucks in other parts of the country. Nikola, we're very, very fortunate. We are the only commercial provider of both of these options. So this would be where we work with customers around that sweet spot. Now, to your point specifically, the charging for the battery-driven trucks is a bit more straightforward. Many capabilities in the market already. And for hydrogen, we basically typically work with a dealer, which is our access point to the customer, to the fleets, and with those fleets, both transportation companies and consumer goods, about here's kind of the economics for the truck. There's obviously some, the initial purchasing price is higher, but there's a lot of incentives that we make sure that we provide access to so that the price becomes more in line with what our customers are used to. And then to your point, there is the second parallel conversation about how much is the price for the hydrogen per kilogram. And that's obviously something where over time, the cost of hydrogen will come down. Over the next 4 or 5 years, we expect it to get fairly close to diesel parity. In the meantime, we need to find out between us and our business partners, how do we actually make this possible so that they put some chips on the table, we put some chips on the table. But again, there's so many ESG goals in place for larger companies, and this is a perfect way to get closer to these goals of 43% reduction in scope 1 and scope 2 by 2030 for many companies. And so it's an investment, but over time, these costs will come down for hydrogen. And to your point, yes, there is two separate but parallel conversations about the cost structure and the price for the truck, and the cost structure and the price for the hydrogen. So those two packages have to be both negotiated. And that's an aspect that's obviously different from the typical purchase of a diesel truck.
Well, and you've mentioned recently that J.B. Hunt, Walmart, Canada, DHL have all purchased trucks as well. For you, what would be the moonshot for Nikola in terms of adoption of Class 8s?
Yeah, very inspiring question and a very inspiring concept. So you mentioned some of those great leading companies that have become our partners and our customers, like a J.B. Hunt or Walmart in Canada, or DHL, one of the leading transportation companies. There's more and more joining. Nestle just became a customer a couple of weeks ago, one of the world-leading consumer goods companies. So what would be the moonshot? For me, the moonshot is if you are in a year or 2 or 3, if you can make the statement that Nikola clearly is the transportation provider of choice for the leading companies in North America and ultimately beyond. We want to be the one where the best companies at what they do in their respective industries choose the best transportation provider that does move business forward reliably, safely, and also in a way that's sustainable. That's the way to go in the future. So we want to be the transportation provider of choice for the leading companies in North America and beyond. And it's a bit like when you think transportation, when you think moving business forward, think Nikola. That's kind of where we want to get to. When you think about moving transportation forward better, think Nikola. So that's the moonshot for every single one of those leading companies.
Yeah, and you bring up all these sustainability initiatives, which you really hear a lot about from particularly the CPG companies that are customer facing. Can you talk a little bit about can you put just any numbers around how much carbon reduction is eliminated by like an electric truck or a hydrogen truck versus the traditional sort of diesel?
So this math we're obviously getting in place. We just about 4 weeks ago put out our first sustainability report. We were perhaps a little bit late to the game here, but if you look at our report, it's on our website. We're getting very specific with the priority areas and then the current baseline of carbon emission and then how much of that we will be impacting. But the one thing I can tell you is even with the 150, 160 hydrogen trucks that we put out there so far, we actually doubled the hydrogen fuel cell kind of footprint in the US by just doing that. And again, green emission means ultimately that it is zero emission. So you actually take the carbon footprint from your transportation over the road, and you take it from the current baseline, which is different for each of the companies based on what they do over the road, what they do locally. Some companies, as you know, locally already have hybrid electric or even electric solutions. So it's based on where you are with your current footprint, and we obviously are working with our customers on making sure the math works. But you ultimately take your current footprint for over-the-road transportation to zero.
On that note as well, I'm interested in your thoughts for regulations, specifically in California. And we've heard a lot about clearly more adoption of alternative fueled vehicles. Can you speak on that too, and where you see the outlook over the next few years as well?
Yeah, that's actually a good point. And you, in your previous segment, you talked about the election last week. I'm very bullish here. The election outcomes, in my mind, mean that different players will even ramp up their efforts even more. So we oftentimes talk about California, and yes, they have been a pioneer in making it lighter, making it easier for companies to choose purposefully to move transportation in a very sustainable way. So it's a good thing, not just smart business, but also the right way of doing it. But this is not just California. This is not a one state phenomenon. We have a very small but dedicated team that actually makes very certain we work with our prospects and our customers on getting the ecosystem to support them. There are state incentives, significant state incentives in place for 2025 in 17 states. There may be secondary incentives in place in some other states, but there are significant ones in place in 17 states. Canada, I talked about it before, certainly also a focus area for us. Same thing, federally and provincially, there's support in place. So yes, regulation is important. Making it lighter for people to do the right thing initially is something that state and federal incentives can help with. No matter what happens on the federal side, we are absolutely convinced, and there's lots of evidence out there that states have decided to put their chips on the table and make sure that they make it lighter and easier for people to do transportation the best possible way. And just to be very clear on that point, these are blue states, these are red states. Carbon emission neutrality and zero emission as a purpose has no blue or red color.
Yeah, that's great. All very exciting developments. So when we had you back on this show, a year from now, sort of what would we be talking about then? What's sort of on the horizon for 2025?
So we would be talking, Mike, about the year of Nikola, which is 2025. So we came up again, most of you are not experts in the timelines of how we developed our trucks over time, but we launched our first fuel cell hydrogen trucks, the ones that have more range than battery trucks, gives more flexibility for customers how to use those trucks. We launched those in the fourth quarter of last year. We had our battery trucks out for a longer period of time. Then we had a recall of those, and so we're just getting those back out to the fleet owners and customers that bought them in the first place. So why is a year from now, when I'm back on your show, why is it going to be the year of Nikola? It is because 2025, for that full year, the first time we can work with our customers on their respective sweet spot. Where do they need a hydrogen truck so that they get a bit more range? Where do they have to rely on a battery truck because geographically in some areas it's easier? But the beauty is we can work with our business partners and customers on making sure they get the right combination of both of those platforms in place for them. The battery-driven truck and the fuel cell hydrogen truck. And again, next year is the first year where for the entire year we can work with our customers on using the combination of the two platforms in a way that's a perfect sweet spot for them.
Well, unfortunately, Tom, we are running out of time here. I wanted to thank you and for participating in this very bullish episode that we had all around. So thank you so much for sponsoring the show, and excited hopefully a year from now to go over that with you too.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks for the energy boost going into the week. Thank you, Grace. Thank you, Mike.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah,
of course. Yeah, and for everyone too, make sure you go check out nikolamotor.com to learn more about the company. I mean, other than that, I think that's pretty much it for today's episode. Make sure you go join the Stockout newsletter. Head to FreightWaves.com, click on newsletters, and join us there. And of course, you get a wonderful discount code for F3 next week. Hoping to see you all there. Until then, enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll be with you on Monday.